Today, we are making this. All of these basses are heavily processed versions of samples from Oversampled's Project X sample pack. Not a sponsor, but now I get the excuse to put his face in the thumbnail. I loaded a bunch of them into my MPC-1 just to get started, and then set each sample to cut off the previous one. I also tuned a bunch of these to be within the same key and programmed some drums. So this is our starting point. So, a bit janky. None of the sounds really connect. They all just sound kind of mashed together with no proper transitions, but it's a start. I've got a flow that I like that I can work with in the DAW. So I exported this without the sidechain, brought it into Reaper, so let's go there next. So this is the Reaper session, which looks fairly intimidating, but we're going to break it down step by step, and it's really not so bad. So let's start off with the same thing that I started with, which is this long growl, which is fun. So remove all the processing and it just sounds like a standard growl. And we've turned it into this kind of riser thing and have cut off the drums to match. So let's go into the individual elements. You're going to start to see some trends. First of all, I am using these two automation tracks here to modulate the pitch up 6 semitones and modulate the formant down 6 semitones. So the tone of it shifts and the pitch goes up 6 half steps. Notice that little pop in there? I was already planning on doing a reverb swell, so I took this opportunity to cover up that little pop. I think that's an error on my end, but regardless, I'm using crystalline here. I've got the width cranked and pretty much nothing else changed. So pay attention to this curve here and the dry wet knob here. So it goes back down and then cuts out right when the next element kicks in. So that's already pretty hype, but we want to take this a lot farther. First off, I brought in a bit of distortion as the sound ends to bring in some extra aggression. Keep it intense all the way through. And now we bring in our secret weapon, Infiltrator by Devious Machines. I've used and abused this plugin a lot, and for good reason. It's got a ton of presets built in. Not a sponsor. This sounds like a sponsored read. It's not a sponsored read. It's got a ton of different effects built in, a bunch of presets that stack a bunch of them, and then you can make your own. My favorite strat for this is to just grab a preset, maybe layer a few presets, and then automate the results or chop out the good bits. So in this case, the main attraction here is this phaser, and there are also some EQs doing a bit of movement. And that's where we get this bit at the end here. That's where that sound comes from, is the phaser, and I have it ramping into it. To build on that, we have another Infiltrator, and like a lot of the stuff you could do in any other plugin, to be completely honest. I just like doing it in Infiltrator because it can give some unpredictable results. This is basically just a volume LFO going back and forth, ramping the volume up and down, that speeds up over time. So I'm automating not only the intensity of the effect, but also the speed of the effect. And that's what gives you that kind of trippy Transformers warble. Also notice that phaser and the volume shaper are after the reverb, because I don't want the reverb to drown that out. I want that to be nice and defined. And then I've got a volume adjustment here just to cut the sound off. I don't think I did it here. I did it here on the second version of the sound, which just picks up where the other one left off, starting at 6 semitones up and going all the way up to be an octave higher than the original. And I've made some kind of general tweaks to the other ramping up effects. And that sets the general formula for how I've tweaked pretty much all of these sounds. So let's take the screech at the beginning. Once again, I've got Infiltrator to start off with. This is the preset saw wave to epic neural bass, which I've used quite a bit. The main things going on are some notch EQs, some overdrive being brought in, some more EQ craziness, just a bunch of stuff moving around, messing up the sound. And some more intense filters. So all that together. And in this case, and in many other cases, I've set this automation curve to fast end. So it like slopes up more dramatically, goes exponential on you like that. And that gives it that phasey quality. Defacer, again, just adding a subtle bit of distortion to the whole sound. And then another infiltrator. And that's adding that phaser / extra stereo width at the end. So this is just like the mix level. And that's the case for a lot of these automation curves. Moving on to this growl here. You could probably make a whole drop out of this. And there are a few different things going on here. Because in the original form, this is probably the jankiest sound of the bunch, where it's very disconnected. All the sounds don't really belong together. But the flow is good, so we know we can process this until it sounds like just one unified effect. So here's one version. A lot of overdrive, a lot of filters, some comb filtering. That's really driving its kind of inharmonic qualities. Same with this phaser. So that's one layer. And then here's the same element with different processing. Add another instance of Infiltrator. That kind of dirties it up nicely. Cut out those lows because that big kind of lawnmower growl is already giving us plenty of low end. Layer them together. And you've got, I think, something that flows a lot better and sounds a lot more like a growl made on purpose. But let's get to that main buzzy saw bass because there's some fun stuff going on there. So here's it in its original form. So first of all, I've got another Infiltrator preset, Little Fills, which just adds a bunch of little effects that all turn on and off over time. And I just got lucky with this one. It does this little volume whoosh sweep thing. And then I've just automated that mix to drop down to 0 pretty quickly because it's like, ooh, I like that little sweep, but I don't like the rest of it. Because here's what the rest of it sounds like. It's fun, but too much. Not really working for the flow of this, for the rhythm of this. I want to keep the rhythm fairly simple. But I kept that little whoosh. And so I'm like, well, I want to keep building. I added a defacer. Very subtle, bring out a bit more distortion. And then another Infiltrator, once again with some automation. This is that same saw wave to epic neuro bass preset. And that just gives it this extra little dunk right here. And then I'm bringing it in, once again, with that exponential curve at the very end. Wow. The biggest thing in dubstep is change over time. That's the thing you're always going to be told, and for damn good reason. So over the course of this one note, this effect comes in, the phase gets all out of whack, and that's how you get a growl. And then I'm sidechaining everything by just dumping this into a folder, putting on a volume plugin, and then literally just picking up this little bit of automation and copying it, pasting it wherever there's a kick or a snare. That simple. And not nearly as labor intensive as you'd think. And the rest of this drop is just variations of that. Very similar processing, just a couple of the presets that we've seen before stacked on top of each other. And finally, this little bit at the end is super fun. And I think this flows real nicely. And so instead of an exponential curve on the saw bass, I'm bringing in that same neural growl preset, but I'm using a logarithmic curve, so it comes in a whole lot faster and really turns it from a saw to a growl. And that transitions us very nicely into this one. And here's the preset I'm using in this case. It's a lot of the same stuff that we've seen before, but this is what that sounds like. Once again, it takes a couple of pretty disconnected elements and just mashes them together in a really nice way. So altogether, 3 separate elements. And then we go into a melodic drop. If you'd like to see what went into the making of the melodic portion of the song, you can check out this video on my main channel here. And if you'd like to see some more beat making on this channel, you can click or tap up over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit. Anyways, my nose looks fucking red, I know.